Hello, folks, and welcome to All Ireland semi-final weekend here in OurGame. Myself, Shane Stevenson, and with Michael Verney. Michael, if you don't get excited about this hurling weekend, you might as well not bother at all.
Yeah, no, proper weekend. You've two. You say you've a strong enough favourite. I'd say Kilkenny are favourites, but can you realistically call the final and really be that confident? I do think I have two in my head that I think will be in the All Ireland final. Would it be a great surprise if the other two won? Not at all. And that's the great thing about this weekend. The only thing I will say, Shane, and I don't like starting on a negative note. Like, Jesus, we're the Thursday going into it, and obviously we're hyped and ready for it. But it should be everywhere. Like, it should be everywhere. There was no media days done by any of the teams. At the minute, there's no days been done by any of the teams before the All Ireland football semi-finals as well. Like, we're really missing a trick. I don't know if counties and teams need to be mandated that they have to do this or whatever, but just to get people out there, and like, there should be billboards everywhere. There should be ads everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a huge weekend in the hurling calendar. No more than the following weekend is going to be in the football, and it really should be drumming up as much publicity as possible for it.
Yeah, well, look, we're going to bring that to you today because we couldn't be more excited about watching Clare against Kilkenny and obviously Limerick against Cork. And we're going to have Mark Foley on the show, obviously played with Limerick with distinction for many years. We'll also have Darach Honan, who, of course, was excellent for Clare and won an All-Ireland with them. And I'm just thinking, this Sunday, Limerick, they'll continue to drive for 5. But will they still be in harness after their clash with Cork? Or will they be condemned as sulky racers? What do you think, Michael?
Oh my God, Jesus! You put a bit of thought into that one, Shano. If fairness, it's a mad one. He obviously Kyle will be big into the harness race, and it was down in Cork that he won as well. And the message that Irish harness racing put up was that he was going to be back after the All Ireland semi-final for another race. So definitely one of the biggest jockeys of all time. Anyway, there is a good one though. Like, by all accounts, the harness racing is quite pretty safe now for a jockey by all accounts.
Do people realise he actually did a race recently and won one? What was it called? Shadow something.
I can't remember the name of it, but he was wearing the Limerick colours. So you're obviously seated when you're doing harness racing, but he still will go down as surely one of the biggest jockeys of all time. Definitely the most athletic jockey of all time, anyway, at 6'5" and just shy of about 15 stone, I'd say. But it's funny, like, I don't know whether he said it to John Kiley. I would assume he did, because it's not something you just go off doing off your own bat. But a week out from an All-Ireland final, that's what he was doing with his Sunday. And he seems to, obviously they're winning on the pitch at the minute, and they're winning on the track as well.
Wasn't it like anything? We're all created equally, but some were created more equal than others. So you might drop one lad over this, but you're not going to drop Kyle Hayes, because he is in many ways the secret to your success. So Newtown Shadow is what the horse is called. But I'd say it is actually a great thrill doing one of those races.
Oh, I'd say so. And just on that as well, I remember doing a piece on Mikey Fogarty, the former jockey. A better one again, like Hayes won a harness race a week before an Ireland semi-final. Mikey Fogarty rode a winner in Galway 3 days before him talking out in the Wexford Senior County Final for St. Anne's. So, and there's a bit more danger on the back of a horse as opposed to sitting with a harness and that. So, that was a bit of a mad one as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. Comments are coming in already. Pao K says, big money on Cork this weekend. Can't see them losing. It's our time. No Barry Nash and loads of fellas only just back from injury. Cork won't lose. Flip side is, right, so Rob Downey missed the semi-final, or quarter-final, I should say, against Dublin with illness. Luke Meade wasn't 100% right, and you could probably see that in how he played. Alan Connolly maybe the same. We don't know, is Ethan Toomey going to be right? I think after the quarter-final, Pat Ryan was saying that he should be back in the mix, but do you throw him back in? Then at the other side, you're wondering, are we going to throw Darragh O'Donovan in? I'll fix my camera there in a second. But, there's a lot at play here.
You currently look like you're in a toilet. You look like you're in a toilet doing that with stuff. Just a quick one for you. Would you have put the bug/illness thing out there?
In terms of like, everyone's playing us down. Let's not interfere with that. Let's allow them to play us down.
That would have been my theory on it anyway.
Yeah, but I suppose at the same time, do they want, so people will come up to Alan Connolly or Rob Downey or Luke Meade or whatever, and maybe it changes how they talk to them, in the sense of people coming up almost negatively, like, don't worry, the scores will come or whatever, rather than just, you weren't 100% right, you'll be flying it on Sunday. So maybe it changes that interaction with the public.
Maybe so. I wouldn't have put it out there personally. I think you're poor out in the small. I keep that. If that's something that there's another 10 or 15 or 20 or 25% in you, I'd keep that between the four walls, being honest with you.
Yeah, Dame O'Brien says Cork being written off by everyone as Limerick are out for revenge. It's a fine narrative for the Cork lads. Mike Doyle says Limerick different animal in Croke Park. You can be sure John and Paul have their homework done on Cork. Well, delighted to say we have Mark Foley coming on the show here. Mark, delighted to have you on the show. And how excited are you about this semi-final?
Hi lads, how's it going? Yeah, very excited. I suppose ever since the that Cork got through, I think everyone was really looking forward to this, because I suppose the match down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh earlier in the Munster Championship was a fantastic occasion, full house. Cork needed to win on the night, and they did so. And in fairness, was one of those classic matches. So I suppose everyone is looking forward to it, based on that match, neutrals and Cork and supporters alike. And I think if we get anything like we did that night, I think all the people watching on will be in for a real treat.
But were you looking forward to it with that hint of, or that glint of revenge in your eyes as well?
Well, I suppose that's all part of it. Like, a lot of the players won't point to that fact. But obviously, if you're beaten by an opposition in that year, you want to be damn sure that you're not going to get caught again by them. But like, the stakes are very high at this stage now. It's real knockout now, and both teams know that if they lose, they're out, which wasn't the case the last time around. So certainly the stakes are a little bit higher for Limerick this time around, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of performance they can bring on the day based on that.
Mark, there's a lot of talk about the puckouts that Cork had and the strategy of, the long puckout from Patrick Collins, which was, of course, aided by the wind. And now and again, he did the 1-2, and he was dropping it all the way into the D. And Cork did brilliantly to get on the breaks. It looked like something they'd really worked on. So the narrative I've heard since is that there's no way that Limerick are going to allow this to happen, and they'll change their setup, and we won't have that same wind assistance as well. Like, do you think that it's as simple as that Limerick will plan for that and that's it, blotted out?
Well, I know they didn't have the wind in the second half, Cork, but I think Limerick, to a large degree, dealt with it on the night. I think they dealt with it at half time. No, it's a lot easier to defend puckouts as a half back line when the opposition goalie has to puck it into the wind. But I think they dealt with it reasonably well in the second half, given the fact, like, I know there was probably an extra 15 yards that Patrick Collins would have got in the first half. But I suppose the one thing it highlighted really was that the modern inter-county hurler, how difficult it is, number one, to get messages into to players on the field, and number two, how slow they are to change from this sort of game plan they might have had before the game. I thought it was kind of obvious what Limerick had to do. I think the half-back line got caught between being too deep and too far forward. They just needed to step back maybe 10 yards or so, get their midfielders in on top of them, their half-forward line a little bit deeper. And if the ball did break, then at least you had more numbers around the ball. But I've kind of seen something like that from Pat Ryan anyway when he was over the Cork under-20s and under-21s. I think he's used Brian Hayes beforehand, sometimes in the half-forward line, sometimes in the full forward line, using his size just to get that ball to ground and just getting the runners off the break then. And I think they really exploited that on the night. But I think Limerick kind of had it figured out after about 10 minutes. It's just that, or maybe a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, they just couldn't get the messages in on the field. There was another couple of things as well, like I think Declan Dalton switched wings there. They were caught a couple of times on that. Limerick tried to hold their shape on that. I think they'll be ready for that this time around. I think they'll probably withdraw one of the players and just make sure they're matched up for numbers on that side of the field. Certainly, I think Cork are going to probably have to come up with something new. And it'll be just very interesting to see what they actually do. But certainly, I think if you're asking what Limerick are going to do now, if you look at that game, I think if you look at the two goals that Limerick got against Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh, they were both from balls that Sean O'Donoghue had in his possession. So I'd imagine at various stages they're going to drop off the full back line, look for them to go short and try and turn them over after that. And if Cork decide to go long with that kind of a shape that Limerick will have, well, then they have extra numbers around that breaking ball. So I think, it'll be just very, very interesting to see what Cork come up with new or can they unhinge that Limerick defence, because they did so for large parts of the first half in Páirc Uí Chaoimh earlier in the summer. And to be fair, I know Limerick went from 8 points down to 4 points up, but on the balance of play, I think Limerick probably could have been down 12 or 13 points at half time that night. So it's up to Cork to try and manufacture that performance again.
I think that's really interesting, Shane, on the point Mark makes about the puck out there. Like, you would expect them to drop off at different times, particularly if there's a gust going into one end or something like that. They won't want them. I don't think they'll mind them going down the throat, because I think they'll be better set up. But I think they'll goad them into going a bit shorter maybe, and trying to have to play through the middle rather than just trying to go over the half back line or break it down off the half back line like they were doing the last day. So, like, Connacht has shown how brilliant he is at adapting mid-game, let alone when he has the guts of about 2 months to plan for a team. So I'm sure he's had it in the back of his head. If we meet Cork again, this is how we're going to move the pieces around. So I definitely don't expect them to be caught like they were the last day. And as Mark said, it kind of was, the solution looked kind of basic enough. It was just stand back 10, 15, 20 yards more, get everyone to pull out a small bit more as well. And listen, we probably wouldn't be talking about it nearly as much if Limerick had got the result like they nearly were going to on the night. It's just when they were beaten, all of a sudden, like, it's gas, lads, how the narrative changes. Limerick win that game by a point or two. Like, I was hearing after the Limerick half back line is finished, the Limerick half forward line aren't able to cover the same ground that they're able to cover. Honan is done at centre back. Like, it's gas, lads. It's gas how the result describes or defines what the narrative is going to be. But I do think Limerick will have solved a lot of the problems. I think even by the Waterford game, they solved a lot of the problems even on their own half back line. And now Burns, who was not in form going into that game, and Honan, who was not in form going into that game, they're now coming into this game in serious form. And Hayes has been in unbelievable form, be it on a harness or on a hurling pitch. That man has been in brilliant form for the last 3 months.
Yeah, in fairness to Kyle, you're talking about a lot of horsepower there now. He's an incredible athlete and an incredible hurler. And to be fair, based on his performances this year, probably was man of the match in at least 2 games, if not 3. And very, very, very impressive this year, to be fair. I think Declan Dalton caused him problems at various stages for different reasons really. In the first game, he dropped a little bit deeper, picked up a lot of kind of handy ball, very, very deep. Kyle elected to hold his position. But that'll be another one of these matchups that's going to be fascinating at the weekend.
Yeah, we said it's the drive for 5, Mark. You might have missed this at the start. Just a bit of messing, sure. Hey, that's the way we like to do it around here. But Mark, I was just thinking about, the difference between Croke Park Limerick and Munster Limerick. So we've seen it, a couple of times now that maybe Clare have challenged Limerick, Cork have obviously done them. Even going back to 2019, they've done the Munster twice. But more recently at Croke Park, Limerick seemed to have the edge over pretty much everybody, leaving out that Kilkenny 2019 game. So just going through it here, and in the 11 games that they've played at Croke Park in Championship in the Kiley era, they've won 10. Now, one of those was after extra time in 2018 against Cork, but they came out on top, just lost that one game. Their average scoreline, this is converting goals to points, is 30.6 points, and the opposition is 24.3. And we have seen it a few times, like, a team has come and pushed them hard in the first half, even Cork in that final in 2021. Shane Kingston got an early goal. They were running at you that day. And then you figure teams out and you, somehow manage to hold your shape at the back and invite the opposition to hit a long ball on top of you, and you end up just crushing their resolve. What is it about Limerick at Croke Park, do you think, Mark?
I don't know. It just seems like it's like a home venue to Limerick now at this stage. Maybe there's a trend there. Like when Clare made the breakthrough back in the 90s as well, they considered Croke Park as like a home venue for them as well. So when you have a good experience somewhere, a very positive experience, well, it can really kind of help you as a team, and you look forward to going back to a place where you've good memories from. And certainly, like Limerick, their experience in Croke Park since they made the breakthrough in 2018 has been fantastic. Bar a blip against Kilkenny, and to be fair, any match they've lost, like the Cork game this year, there hasn't been a lot in it. So it's not as if they were marked absent or anything like that. So their performances in Croke Park have been generally very, very good. And as you say there, Shane, like their ability to figure teams out and to figure their own problems that they're presented with on the day is really, really impressive. And I think that probably that probably, differentiates or maybe marks them out as a little bit different from the other teams. They're very, very smart, very, very shrewd, and I suppose that was probably helped during COVID times with the quarters and that. You'd see Paul Kinnerk coming out with his tactics board and that, but very, very smart. And I think, to be fair, I just go back to it again, like the puck out scenario against Cork. I think they almost, I think Paul went down at one stage in the first half, just to give instructions, but wasn't allowed to do so because, you have nowhere for now. So it's a very difficult thing to do, to change things mid-game now, as opposed to maybe a few years ago. But certainly their in-game management on the sideline is very, very good. And they're able to turn games into sixpence. Sometimes when it seems like things go against them. But the Croke Park factor, it is a factor. I think the other factor is then, right. You mentioned it there a few minutes ago. Every week it seems to be a different narrative based on a performance. Like Cork a month ago, they were cock-a-hoop. The supporters and the general Cork public were, extremely bullish, and very confident still now, to be fair, as would be in Cork's nature, but maybe not as uber confident now as they were. And that's based on the matches as they go on week in, week out. It just seems to be on the back of one performance, the whole narrative changes. But I do think, right, just looking at Limerick, I think the fact that the other factor is then that matches go on so fast that you've no real time to analyse the actual match that went on a Sunday, because you're on to the next one the week after. So if you really analyse the Limerick performance in the Munster final, I think that, right, they'll be looking for a big improvement the next day. I think like Clare, they were better than Clare on the day. At times it felt like maybe a 5 or 6 point hammering or whatever, but Clare were very poor on the day, really didn't show up. And I think Limerick, if they were on their A game, I think they would have put Clare to the sword a lot earlier, and Clare had chances for goals. So I think Limerick will want to improve the next day. And certainly the Croke Park thing might feed into that, but they'll be looking for a bigger performance, I think, on Sunday.
The graph is climbing all the time though, Mark, isn't it? It looks like you're talking about them getting into Croke Park, where they've always been brilliant. And you're looking at the year as a whole and you're thinking every game is a bit of improvement. And even, I know, there's players coming back from injury at the weekend. Obviously, big talk of Barry Nash been unavailable, or definitely been a big doubt. But they have outside of him, and obviously Peter's a long-term injury, they've nearly everyone available and fit as an option. And you just think they've a month to prepare for this, rest up, get ready again. You find it hard to believe that they would underperform, and they've never really underperformed at Croke Park. You'd think that it's going to be an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 performance based on all history.
Yeah, and again, all we can do is make a judgment based on the evidence that we have. So for the evidence over the last few years where Limerick have won the Munster Championship, the break, they've come back stronger from the break. Now, Limerick and Kilkenny seem to be able to manage that gap a little bit better than other teams. Now, they've had more experience of it since, over the last few years, in Limerick's case, since 2018 anyway, because they've been very successful in Munster. But generally speaking, they're in a better place now than what they were a month ago, I think. And again, we're just referencing the Cork game because that's the most, I suppose, the most relevant, because the two teams are clashing again on Sunday. Darragh O'Donovan wasn't available that night. William O'Donoghue, who was just back from injury, wasn't 100% fit. And I think if you just look at Darragh O'Donovan, just as for one of the options that they have at their disposal. Sean Finn went off injured the same night at halftime, I think. But Darragh O'Donovan, he releases so many options, whether he starts or not. So you take, for instance, start that night, Diarmuid, Burns struggled. Declan was kind of ran out of gas maybe after maybe 50, 55 minutes or whatever. So Darragh O'Donovan in the middle of the field with Adam English releases William O'Donoghue, for instance, to go back and finish out the game at centre back, or Colin O'Neill to go right half back if Diarmuid struggles. One player, you're talking an extra maybe 5 or 6 options that are available to Limerick on the back of that one player. So I think if Darragh was available that night, you might be talking about a different story. But it just shows you, if you get all your players back fit and well and hungry, it makes a huge difference to the overall team performance, because basically it's a 20-man game now, obviously. And if we've everyone chomping at the bit to try and get their place in the team and improving week on week, well, then it does result in an increase and a much improved team performance at the business end of the championship.
Michael, you caused ructions this week with your story about Barry Nash and his hamstring injury. I believe he is back in some sort of training. I don't know if where are we at in terms of injuries with both teams here?
I haven't heard much from a Cork point of view, being honest with you. Nash is definitely a doubt. There's definitely an injury, and I was only chatting to Kieran was on the throw-in yesterday, and he said he was out. He also said that Cian Lynch's twins are being called Kieran and Kieran, which I thought was a good one. Sean Finn is definitely back in the mix. He was fit to make the 26 for the Munster final, but just didn't break into the 26. Richie English was obviously back in the 26 that day. He's good to go again. Darragh Donovan has another month under his belt, but hasn't featured since February 24 in a competitive game. So whether he's going to be brought into the mix 5 months later for his first competitive game in that length of time is probably a doubt. Flanagan is back in the mix as well. I think it's interesting with Flanagan. Shane O'Brien was very good in the Munster final, particularly for a rookie. Does Kiley go with the tried and trusted, or like he knows what he's going to get from Flanagan, who his last game that he played, he scored 3-3 against the opposition that they're playing in the All-Ireland semi-final. So like Kiley's options aren't too bad going into the semi-final, even if Barry Nash is emerging as a big doubt. From a Cork point of view, like I haven't heard anybody that's out or anything like that. At the minute, it's probably something that you'll only see when the 26 is named, or even half an hour before throwing.
Yeah, Mark, just in terms of Cork, right, I'm going to bring this up on screen. Potential team, it may change from this. It hasn't been named yet. Like maybe Ethan Toomey will come in. Kieran Joyce, I would imagine, he could start here at midfield. I'm not sure what you think. Like, what would you fear most about Cork? What setup would worry you, or what players playing where would you be concerned about?
Well, I suppose the first thing, just to kind of the helicopter view as we're looking at it there, right? The big thing from a Cork perspective is, can they keep the score down at the back? They have the firepower up front. They are a go-forward team, but the big question, they conceded 326 the first day against Limerick. I don't know the total against Waterford, was it 125, something like that?
225, 319 against Offaly as well.
Yeah. There you go. So, they're just shipping too much. And the danger is someday you ship more than 3 or 4 goals. It's going to be hard to win a game if you continue in that vein. So the big question marks are, for me, I think Cork will put up a score. I think they have, class forwards, good movement. Look, there's probably a myth there like that. I met a lot of the Cork people down in Park Creek tonight to beat Limerick, and it's kind of play it wide, run the legs off them and all that. There's no real pace as such in that Cork forward line. You have Declan Dalton, you have Seamus Harnedy, and you have Hoggy, who are all brilliant hurlers, but they're not going to burn you, you know what I mean? But certainly, I think what's key from a Cork point of view is they move the ball as fast as possible and try and spread out and get separation between the lines on that Limerick defence. But the big question marks are, can they keep it tight at the back? Can their full back line hold the Limerick full forward line? Whatever it is now, the talk down here is that they'll start Seamus Flanagan because he doesn't really present the same option as coming on as a sub. It's a starter or kind of nothing. He hasn't come on as a sub that often. And he had a memorable night in Páirc Uí Chaoimh the night they played Cork. But the Limerick setup will be along similar lines. You'll have Flanagan as you have it there inside with Aaron Gillan. Who've the other corner forward to Tom? You have Colin O'Neill. Garrod Hegarty will get a spin in there as well. They'll test the Cork cornerbacks, I think, in the air. Sean O'Donoghue and Owen Downey's good in the air. They'll probably go after Mark Coleman as well, I'd say, maybe in the air. Mark Coleman, obviously a fantastic ball player and very, very good going forward. They'll try and turn him on the back foot, but it'll be a long expected line to say. Flanagan, Gillan on the edge of the square. They'll probably have someone in between the half forward line and the full forward line at the top of the triangle, working as a link man. That could be Cian Lynch, but Cian Lynch, I think, is probably better out around centre forward. And after that, they'll just try and move Cork all over the place, and they'll definitely go for them, I'd say. Maybe a bit more direct than maybe what they did the first day, but it just points to a fascinating contest, and I think one that the greater hurling public is really looking forward to.
Okay, delighted to stay with Darach Honan on the line as well. Darach, how are things?
Good, lads. How are you?
We're good. We've talked a fair bit about Limerick, which is probably the last thing you want to talk about. So we see what your thoughts are on Cork. Where are they strong?
Yeah, look, I had good faith in Cork earlier this year that they do well, and I actually backed them for the All Ireland the morning they played Limerick in the group game.
Before the game,
because I thought there was value there.
Are you sitting on one of these 50-1 bets? Are you?
Well, it went into 40 the morning of the Saturday. It was 50 on the Thursday, but I was too slow to act. But so I have a vested interest. I had just full exposure there. But I think, you know, I was very encouraged by their display, you know, in those rounds and against Tip thereafter. But they seem to have lagged off a bit in the last couple of days, and there won't be any room for that, you know, coming up against Limerick in Croke Park. So, you know, my confidence is probably weighing slightly after the last couple of games, and you know, Limerick would be firm favourites in that game. Cork need to bring massive energy to it, and you know, it's an energy that they kind of lacked against Dublin, definitely. So, you know, the jury's probably out, but from a Cork point of view, you know, the All-Ireland loss that they went up against Limerick a few years back, that'll still have to sting them. And, you know, that'll have to be in the back of their mind that they're going up to make amends for that display. So it'll be interesting to see, can they do that.
Cheers, Darach. You'd be a happy man on Sunday, by all accounts, if Limerick are beaten and you're sitting on a hefty little Cork wager too. It's like the dream scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I will trade it in gladly for a Clare win. I'll just make that very clear.
Mark, can I just let you go on this one? You've obviously coached Darragh Fitzgibbon at club level with Charleville. Like, how much of a threat does he present? Like, he's playing probably some of the best hurling of his career this year, realistically. He's just bombing up and down. Seems to be averaging 3-4 points a game as well.
Yeah, for sure. Darragh's a fantastic athlete, and what a threat going forward. I think his scoring record from the middle of the field is huge. And again, the matchup between himself and William O'Donoghue is going to be very, very interesting. I think it's going to be one of the key battles going around, you know, around the field. But Darragh's a fantastic player, a great clubman for Charleville as well. Very unfortunate last year, he broke his metatarsal, so we missed him for the whole championship, and he was a huge loss, no doubt about that. But it's great to see him back to form this year. He was brilliant in the earlier rounds against, you know, especially against Limerick, and against Tipperary. Well, yeah, against Clare as well. Knocked over a lot of scores in the middle of the field, but it's his pace, like, from the middle of the field. Once he gets on that shoulder of whoever's on the ball, if it's a half forward, or if it's Ethan Toomey in the middle of the field, he's gone. Simple as that. There's no catching him. So I'm sure Cork will look to get him into space, and if they do, he's a lethal weapon in around that middle of the field. But yeah, great player, Darragh, and I hope he plays very well on Sunday. But obviously, that he comes out the wrong side of it.
Mark, just as you go there, who's going to win the two games?
I go Limerick Kilkenny again. Yeah.
Right.
Just about. I think they're going to be very tight. They could go either way. I just think Kilkenny might go after Clare's full back line, I think, and that could be the difference.
And yeah, so you're not backing Clare. Geez, Darragh will have the right to reply in a second, but you're not believing that they can turn it around, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's going to be a toss of a coin between the teams. And like, if you look at Clare, Tony Kelly, outstanding the last day, getting on to the end of things, and that's what he is. He's a finisher. He looks to be back in form. Shane O'Donnell has been absolutely unbelievable all year. So if those two click on the day and their backs, I think their full back line, if they can hold it tight, which is a big ask against Kilkenny. Adrian Mullen looked to be in five. He was at the Leinster final as well. Adrian Mullen was very good, and Owen Cody. They look to be refreshed after a break with Ballyhale this year. I think it's going to be very, very close. Just like the Limerick Cork game. I just think Kilkenny might be able to get the goals to win the game, but no, I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Clare opened up a lead that they'd win the game as well by 5 or 6 points. But I think it's going to be, very, very little between all the teams at the weekend.
Okay, well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you up at Croker.
Thanks, lads. See you.
Cheers, Mark. Just Shane there quickly, we're talking about the midfield. I think Ethan Toomey and whether he plays or not is huge, because I know he probably went off around the 50, 55 minute mark today down the park, but he had a huge role that day. Like, he kept Keane Lynch out of that game, and they need a bit of balance in the middle of the field there. Fitzgibbon is brilliant going forward. He probably doesn't forage as much at the back. Toomey is the one that does the donkey work, and they need a bit of balance there. So, like, if he's fit to play, I'd probably be putting him in, particularly because you know what he can do against Limerick. So I think the balance of the Cork team is going to be very, very interesting too.
Yeah, like
Darragh, it's nice to be there, no?
What's that?
Like, if Joyce plays midfield in the All-Ireland semi-final, it's probably like, outside of a couple of weeks ago, he's never played there in a big game before. And the thing about it as well, I don't think he's a marker necessarily, and then I think he's a ball player, and then all of a sudden you have two ball playing midfielders. Like O'Donoghue and Donovan kind of O'Donovan mixed the two for Limerick really, really well. Darragh probably goes forward a bit more than Will O'Donoghue does, but I don't know if I think the balance will be a bit off there. I wouldn't be surprised if Joyce was wing back though. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Joyce started wing back.
Yeah, I mean, Darach, if you're the Limerick manager here, you're surely going to say, right, let's try and isolate Mark Coleman, brilliant hurler as he is. We all know he's a brilliant hurler, and put Hegarty or Tom Morrissey on him. So maybe you could straight up do a swap and say, let's hope that he has the hurling. Like, let's hope he's got positional now to play midfield. We know he's got the hurling, and maybe that can suit him. Or they bring in Ethan Toomey, or give Luke Meade another go, because I don't believe he was 100% feeling healthy for the last game.
Yeah, well, I suppose on the first thing you suggested there, like, does Coleman going to midfield address that imbalance that Michael's talking about? It probably doesn't. You know, if anything, I think Joyce is probably more defensive minded than Coleman. So, but I'd have no problem having Joyce playing alongside Fitzgibbon. I think they would work well together. You know, I think Joyce is a very good player and has experience at centre back. Can offer a bit of cover there as well to Downey, you know, which would be needed. So that's what I would go with midfield anyway. Would be Joyce and Fitzgibbon. Yeah,
there's going to be some fascinating matchups there. Like I just can see Limerick bringing the pain to them a bit more. Like if you look at even Declan Dalton set the tone maybe at the start of the Limerick game in the park. Like there was a few. Like you just have to get in lads' faces and stuff like that. But I expect, if anything, Limerick could be the aggressors in that respect on Sunday. I was chatting to Alan Cadigan just for a piece in the paper tomorrow. It's gas what he came back to. I thought he actually said this voluntarily, and I hope he hears this. He said, I have a couple of worries about Cork, and I think Limerick will have learned a lot of lessons from the day in the park. But he says our Corkness always comes to the fore. He said we've beaten them before. Why can't we beat them again? And I just said, yeah, I lapped that up, Alan. Good man. I haven't heard a Cork person actually say Corkness before.
Yeah, the Corkness over the last 3 years, you'd be hoping, as a Cork person, you might be hoping it doesn't come. So I'm not so sure about that.
What would you do, Darach, about Fitzgibbon and those runs he's going to make? Because, on the face of it, you look at that midfield. Let's say Darragh O'Donovan's fit to start and Will O'Donoghue. In a straight line run, they're not going to catch him, obviously, and very few are. So they'll probably hope that the group can get with him. But is there any player that you'd earmark to say, look, keep an eye on him at all times?
Well, I think the most important thing, with negating his influence would be that your half back line gets on top of their half forward line. Because if their half forward line is winning possession there, it's nearly impossible to man mark a midfielder out of running off the shoulder and collecting it and throwing it over the bar. So, how well Fitzgibbon plays might really depend on how well his half forward line in front of him are going. After that, if Limerick are on top there, you would see O'Donoghue and Donovan or whoever they go with there. I think they'd be well able once they get that platform in the half back line. And to be fair, in the Munster final, their half back line was absolutely brilliant again. They're back to their best. I thought Cork had huge success blowing the park on the puck outs, and they overloaded Burns' side and got a lot of success there. So it'll be interesting to see how Limerick react to that. That day they left Hayes kind of half come across and he didn't make his way the entire way across and they had an overload as a result. So that'll be very interesting. How do Limerick react to that now? Because they'll be expecting, obviously they'll have analysed each other to death in the meantime.
I'd be surprised, Shane, if Big Will isn't the man to go after Fitzgibbon. I'd be very, very surprised. And I'd say on Darach's point there, I would expect them to be trying to cut Fitzgibbon off at the pass, as in before he receives the ball or as he's receiving the ball. Once he gets a head up his steam, no one's really going to stay with him. It's kind of been a bit miserable, and maybe trying to stop that initial run and break it up before he gets a head up his steam at all.
Yeah, Darach, after the quarterfinals, we did a bit of a hurling power rankings. We want to see, do you agree or disagree with it? So here's what we put up the last time. It took a second for the penny to drop.
I was wondering where that was going.
Yeah, you're flying high again, Shane. You're on top of the world again.
They don't need much, Darach. They don't need much, and they're off.
Well, just anyone who's listening.
I heard Woodlaugh the other day talking again about Kilkenny tip games, the traditional counties, how they're the best hurling games of all. But Doesn't take long to get you started again.
And someone said as well, the big problem about Tip winning All Ireland is that the two Ronnies will have a song out about it.
Well, look, for anyone who's listening on the podcast and can't see it, I have the Tip Miners in as number 1, Limerick 2, Kilkenny 3, Clare 4, and Cork 5. So just a bit of Mickey taken there to keep things nice and light on the show. But like in terms of that Cork Limerick game, how do you see that going overall? Are you on the side of Limerick in this game, Darach?
I suppose I probably am. Yeah, I just think Cork have an awful lot to prove up in Croke Park, and after the last 2 games when they were under par, and Limerick have been there and done it, and it'll take a lot to rattle Limerick. So whether Cork, if we're talking about Limerick being the aggressors, Cork have to match that physicality and aggression. Number 1, that's unnegotiable, and after that, they give themselves a chance. But whether they'll be able to or not, the jury's probably out. I'd have to land on the side of Limerick there. They've a proven track record. They can see out these games. They've done a similar trajectory as they did last year, where they probably squeaked through in Munster. And, we saw what they did then when they really opened up and they got to Croke Park, and they're peaking for this time of year. So for those reasons, I'd probably side with a Limerick win in that.
What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, no, I'd be the same. I just don't know. I don't know if Cork are going to be able to get. I don't think they'll get as much joy as they got down the park. I don't see them getting a 6 or 7 point lead or having any sort of buffer like that at any stage in the game. If anything, I probably see Limerick hitting the ground running a bit more. And in the heel of the hunt, I think Limerick will win by 5 or 6. Actually, to be honest with you.
Now, the only thing as well is the game below in the group stage is like Cork gave away 2-2 in that game with short buckets and mess, and they should have won that game by more, even though they did very well to win it at all at the end. But it just seems to me like they've gone a little bit backwards since then, and Limerick have gone forwards.
And just one other factor then is the Aaron Gillan factor at Croke Park, and I was just kind of wondering how much damage has he done there. So he's played 11 championship games with the senior team there. He scored 576 from play 430, so that averages up at 3.8 points per game. So he is that factor, and maybe he hasn't had his greatest season. Like, he is hurler of the year. He's obviously one of the best in the country, Darach, but how good is he and how big of an influence will he have, especially now if Flanagan is back into the team after missing the last day against Clare?
Yeah, well, like Aaron's been definitely the best inside forward over the last 4 or 5 years, like in the country. You couldn't argue with that. And, maybe he's been a little bit quieter, but like he was quiet in the game when Ennis above, and he still finished with, I think he got 2 goals and caused, when the game was there to be won, came to the forefront. Like you might see, the thing with Limerick is like you might see a few of their players quiet during the game, but one of the other lads will always step up. And it's hard to put out all those fires across that 6 forward line because they're all capable of absolutely lighting it up on any particular day. So maybe he's been a bit quieter so far, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he got a few goals and was the difference this weekend.
Just on Gillan's been brilliant in Croke Park, and Hegarty brings outrageous form into Croke Park, somewhere where he's been unbelievably good in recent times. Maybe more so in finals, but I remember he's brilliant in the 2020 semi-final. And this whole tactic of putting him into the corner now at different stages has worked a treat, particularly in the 2 Clare games. And he will have he'll have a fair height advantage over both of the. He won't have bigger arms than Sean O'Donoghue, but he's got about 5 or 6 inches in height on him. So I think I wouldn't be he's going to be in there for probably a prolonged period at some stage as well.
Yeah, in both games against Clare, that move of Hegarty into the inside line, probably opened up the lead for them. We didn't adapt it at all in Ennis when they moved him in, and he was wide open for one of the goals. And then the last day he went into the corner. Davy Mack always follows him. I would have been much more comfortable with leaving Davy Mack out wing back and leaving Conor Cleary and pick him up inside. And that's maybe a lesson learned. But Hegarty is a big game player, and he's an exceptional athlete, brilliant hurler. So that's what I mean. There's just all 6 of those forwards are capable of winning the game, and having a huge man and match display. So it's hard, to dampen all those fires.
And one of the big reasons that I would go at Limerick here is how many players on the Cork team would make the current Limerick team?
Oh, great question.
And you could make an argument for none, or you could make an argument for maybe 3 or 4. but you'd struggle to make an argument for any more than that.
It's a fair one now, yeah.
I need a few Cork people on here that have an argument for 15 or 16.
But with their Corkness.
The Cork public.
Do you remember that statement they had put out a few years ago about how Corkness, get back to Corkness, which was confidence on the right side of arrogance. I think that was the actual quote on the press release.
Was it confidence bordering on arrogance?
I think it was, it was one or the other. That's two cheeks of the one arse, really.
Who would be the couple of players? Like Darragh Fitzgibbon would be right there anyway. Hoggy would obviously be right there too.
Sean O'Donoghue, you can make an argument, but that full back line for Limerick is impregnable, as Mike Tyson might say. I don't know. Darragh Fitzgibbon would be the sort of main one for me. I don't know, Darragh. Can you make a case?
Up there, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like Barrett's absolutely flying it.
In
fairness, he's having a brilliant year. And Alan Connolly. Those two lads, I would argue for both of them.
So drop Gillan and drop Keane Lynch.
No, I'd find other lads.
Or you drop Hegarty then.
No, Jesus, I'm not going to make a headline there. No, Fitzgibbon, Barrett, and Connolly, I think I probably would work the three of those lads in.
So can I ask you, Darragh, just as a full forward, would you be worried? Alan Connolly had 4-6 scored from 12 shots throughout Munster, and he hasn't taken a shot in his last 2 games. As a full forward, would that worry you going into, an All-Ireland semi-final?
Yeah, it would. It should worry the team. He's their most potent forward, and they're not getting him into the position to score. So whatever the game plan is, the game plan should always be to get your most potent players on the ball in scoring positions. And obviously they failed to do that the last 2 days. I think he's absolutely electric. He's a brilliant player. We have a similar struggle in Clare with Shane. He's playing brilliant hurling, but in the Munster final, we didn't get him on the ball for 27 minutes in the second half. So I suppose a lot of thought and analytics goes into these things, but that's the basis of it. Should be, how do we get our scoring players on the ball in position to do so in a bit of space? And they've obviously, they'll have to reevaluate why that hasn't happened the last couple of games.